Welcome back to the 47th annual Victorian Alliance Home Tour. I'm your host, Bonnie Spindler. This time we're going to look at the remnants of Victorian era. We are going to look at the technology at that time. There was a lot of technological and social changes, and the middle class was burgeoning and growing, and they wanted the same things that the wealthy had. And so they were getting things to make their lives easier. The wealthy were trying to accommodate their servants and to entertain their friends in a luxury way. Let's look for the clues that are left behind today from this new opulent lifestyle.
We are currently in the Grand Tower of the home. It was constructed on the house at the time the house was built in 1889 because William Westerfeld wanted to have a grand view of the city, one of the finer views of the city at the time when the house was built, 360-degree view all the way out to the ocean before they built the apartment building off to the side. He could clearly see the ships docking on the docks. So when goods and merchandise was arriving on the docks coming over from Oakland, he could come up here and see if he needed to send a crew down there to unload his merchandise that might be coming in. And also just had an incredible view of the city. He wanted to top off, his brother had a nice view over on Nob Hill, and he wanted to have a finer view than his brother. During the Victorian period, they often had themed period type rooms, and there was it was the beginning of people actually being able to travel, the wealthier people being able to travel and explore the Orient. And this room I have decorated as a Turkish smoking room. It was very common in larger Victorian homes for the men to have a smoking room, often decorated in a Persian type motif. So I tried to pick wallpaper that looked Arabesque, and I tried to, well, this furniture is actually 1880s furniture from Turkey. And and we have a giant hookah behind us over there. So the room has the feeling of an 1880s Turkish smoking parlor. And I do use it to come up here late at night and entertain my guests with a bottle of wine. The ceiling heights are pretty tall. The rooms are large, as this was built as a single-family mansion at the time. On the parlor floor here, we have 14-foot ceilings. The bedroom floor above us has 12-foot ceilings. The servants' quarter floor has 10-foot ceilings. The ballroom floor has 11.5-foot ceilings. And then the tower has 22-foot ceilings, and the top of the tower is actually opened up into a pyramid, which is actually 44 feet from the bottom of the floor of the tower to the peak of the pyramid, which you were able to see from the tower. We know quite a bit about the servants from this house from the census data, which was not destroyed in the 1906 earthquake. There were 6 live-in servants at the time when the Westerfelds owned it. They also owned a adjoining lot here, which had a carriage house on it, and so there was a coachman for the horses. They had an Irish cook. There was a nanny for the children, and a butler to answer the door, and 2 maids. And they lived on the 4th floor of the house, although there was a servant's bedroom for the cook lived on the ground floor behind the ballroom and next to the kitchen. And then the other 5 servants lived on the 4th floor of the house, which was not as ornately decorated as the rest of that building. The original kitchen of this house was on the ground floor of the house behind the ballroom. And the room that we use as a kitchen today was actually just a butler's pantry where they would prep the food once it was already cooked downstairs. The food would be sent up in the dumbwaiter to the butler's pantry. The family would then either present the food in the morning room, which was the breakfast room, or in the other room, which is the dining room. They also use the dumbwaiter. It goes all 4 floors for the servants to send laundry down to the downstairs, or for the family to send laundry or items downstairs.
Well, 36 years ago, a company, Magic Brush Painting, was hired to do a complete restoration of the entire exterior of the Westerfeld house. And I was hired as a historical design consultant to assist with the cataloging and the documentation of all the missing parts of the building and all of the damaged areas that would need to be worked on and other miscellaneous missing pieces of the building. And what we found was very surprising, because there were missing pieces all over the back of the building, which faces north, where pieces don't usually fall off, because of weather is not so bad on the north side. And this being the south side of the building is where you would have expected to find all the missing pieces. However, they were all there, and so we concluded that they had mined the back of the building, which wasn't as an important thing, from the front perspective, and used all those pieces to replace all the ones that had fallen off the front. And when we came along, we found all of these strange little dummy pieces stuck in the places where they had taken away all of the pieces from the back of the building. I also worked on designing new finials, like all of these newel posts and handrails are all new, and I personally installed on all the pieces, including some very large finials up on the upper part of the portico. But primarily it was about documenting missing pieces. We decided that it was going to be very difficult, this was happening in February, to work on stripping all these pieces on the bay. So every single piece of decoration that you see on the bay window in the front here was removed from the building, was all numbered and cataloged and taken to a shop where it was all stripped and cleaned and sanded and then painstakingly put back together again so that it would actually look like a new building.
John Coop was the builder of this house, and he was the foreman for a big planing mill, which was then at 6th and Howard. He built this house, I'm sure, to show off what sort of woodwork they could do. Basically, when I moved in, this room was 4 square walls. One had been paneled with the ubiquitous paneling of the 60s. I was pretty sure it had been a library, and when this house was built, a lot of things were actually built off-site and brought in, and one of them was the windows. And so, taking out a window, I discovered, written on the side of it, library window. So obviously the man who installed it was following the plans. I wish I had those plans, but I don't. But in any case, that pretty well decided that this is going to be a library. It would have had freestanding cabinets and things, which went away at some point. But I decided I wanted it built in, so I built it in. And the rest, as they say, is history. It's been here ever since. Well, there is a secret space known in the vernacular as the Pope's Hole, a place where you hid the Pope in the days when popes were hunted.
The houses in San Francisco, when they were built, were still dependent on gas lighting. You had electricity from day one, but it wasn't on for very long during the day and was notoriously not very reliable. So it was very common to have a light at the base of the stairs on top of the newel post, and of course, everything had to be decorative. So very elaborate sculptural bronze lamps were made. These days, we spend a lot of time turning them into electric fixtures instead of gas, which they very often originally were.
The house was gaslit originally, no question about it. The combination gas fixtures in the house are all functional, and they date from about 1910. The ones in the parlor are Monkey Ward's very finest of 1910, according to a catalog I found. And in those days, neither gas nor electricity was all that reliable, so you had your choice of both. The woman who lived here and gave me pictures of the house later on said it was their primary source of heat. When it was cold, they just burned the lights, even if it was in the daytime. Makes perfect sense. At one point during this gas era, they evidently had gas fixtures that could be lit by the press of a button. And that worked by means of a little attachment on each jet, which opened the valve and struck a spark. Obviously, if something didn't work, you were likely to have a leak or a gas jet that was open and not lit. And they were exceedingly dangerous and probably lasted very short time in this house and many others because they had a lot of explosions. But the buttons that were originally used to light the lamps, I've rewired using low voltage control, and it controls the lights in the hallways up and down. So you can come in, turn on a light, go all the way to the third floor and turn the lights off again, all by means of pressing buttons.
The entry hall and whole procedures of greeting your guests and welcoming them into your home had quite a ritual in Victorian times, evidently. So you would come in, your servant would answer the door. They would bring you into the rear hall if you were waiting to see one of the residents, and you had a place to sit. And if you were going to be staying, then you had a place where you could take off your hat. There'd be a little mirror where you could adjust your hair afterwards. If you had a coat, then under the staircase was a nearby little coat closet. And because the streets were quite dusty and dirty, the next little room is a little sink area. And we wondered, why would they have, a little wash basin and not have a half bath or something? And it was, you just needed something to freshen up your hands and clean up a little bit. So every piece of your ritual, from being greeted at the door to being relieved of your hat and coat, being allowed to regroup and make yourself clean and hair all adjusted, was taken care of. We do pretty big parties. And the little wash area, sink area, is strategically just between the rear hall and the dining room. So it's a perfect place to have a bar. So we have our bar service done where the former wash area was.
The dining room has some very interesting features that really showcase the wood, the old growth mahogany. There is a large window facing west that has a large paneling in it. It used to be a window that looked out onto a garden, but today it's been filled with a old growth mahogany panel. The son of the owner, we believe, carved his initials into the paneling, so there is now an AF on that particular space. There are double doors on the other side of the fireplace that you'll see that really don't go anywhere, but they add to the depth and warmth of the room by looking like wood paneling. In order for the family to properly invite their guests in for dinner, there would have been a closed door, and the family would have been sitting here in the rear parlor, and the door would open and dinner would be announced. Dinner is served.
Thank you so much for joining us, and join us again next time. We're going to check into a bit of history. We're going to look at who lived in these houses before. You'd be surprised to find out the broad section of people who have lived in these homes. Immigrants, titans of industry, artists, and hippies.